So I have a lot of Apple computers, mostly older gear, and quite a few PowerBooks. These are ancestors of the modern MacBooks, and much like today, Apple always had a strong lineup of portables, and even during the times when they were struggling as a business, notebooks in many ways carried the company forward. However, although I did have PowerBooks from the late 90s and early 2000s, I didn't actually have any from the early part of the 90s. The closest model I had to these cool gray chunky boys was the 3400C. But just recently I saw this cool 150 model being sold on my local auction site with the initial price of just 10 bucks. It was shown to be in a pretty bad shape, but it looked to be complete, and because it was so cheap I jumped on it. I was the only bidder, so I won, and after paying a very small shipping fee, it came in after just a couple of days. And yeah, as I unpackaged it, I could see the extent of the damage. As bad as this looked, I wasn't at all surprised to see those broken hinges, as I have indeed seen these with busted plastics before, mainly on channels like This Does Not Compute, and I would refer to his videos and methods quite a lot in this restoration. Before doing anything, however, I wanted to assess the condition in a bit more detail, so I decided to try powering it up. I also noticed it had a disk left in the floppy drive. And while I didn't have the original power adapter, thankfully these older PowerBooks use a regular old barrel jack and take 7.5 volts, which is what I gave it. Not 2 seconds after I plugged in the adapter, it gave me the famous Apple chime. I quickly repositioned the camera and could see a faint Macintosh logo on the screen. I was sure it was going to get stuck, but against all odds the thing started booting into macOS. I wasn't sure whether it was booting from the hard drive or the floppy, but judging from the sounds it was the latter. And while it did boot, I could hardly see anything just due to the poor contrast. At first I was afraid it was due to the failing capacitors on the inverter board, and it took me a while to figure out that, much like many of the other laptops from this part of the 90s, it had a brightness and a contrast adjustment. After fiddling with those, yeah, I got an amazingly clear picture. Well, at least as good as you're going to get with these old black and white DST and passive matrix panels. Better still, the trackball was working perfectly as well, along with the keyboard. Unlike some of the 90s laptops I have, this one really does feel nice to type on. I tried ejecting that disk, and while it did that just fine, it asked for it back, which made me think it was indeed booting from it. Yep, I tried booting without that disk in the drive, and it wouldn't, which made me think the hard drive was bad. No big surprise there. However, when I booted into the OS, I could indeed see that hard drive on the desktop. It had some files on there which I could view. But when I went to check that drive using one of the available utilities, it said it couldn't read from it. Huh. Well, we'll get back to that drive later, since it wouldn't be that hard to replace, given how it's one of the first notebooks Apple used an IDE interface with, and I do have some working IDE drives in my storage. That aside though, what the heck? The machine seemed to be in great working condition overall, which was a huge surprise given where it came from and the external condition. However, there was work to be done on it for sure, and I started by getting that LCD off, which involves taking out a couple of T8 Torx screws, and amazingly, that bit is the only one you need to take apart pretty much the entire machine. Once I did that, I could separate it from the LCD and inspect the damage to the plastic frame. Yep, the screw stocks had broken off from the hinges, and the more I worked on the machine, the more cracks I noticed, as you'll see. Now, my mission for this machine was to first get the screen attached back to the top case and make it usable, and second was to do some preventative maintenance, in particular to remove the internal clock battery. Those can absolutely ruin computers, as I've pointed out in the past. To get to the inside, I proceeded to remove the external battery, which also had potential to leak, but this one hadn't, and it was in pretty good condition, although no doubt very dead at this point. Next, I turned the unit over and I removed 5 of those same Torx screws, and after removing a single cable, I could detach the palm rest and the keyboard. The motherboard looked to be in great shape. No leaks, no weird caps or other damage, and to my amazement, the top case where the clock battery was had no leaks whatsoever. So we got to it in time, and I was quick to snap that battery out from the little board before it did any damage. With that out of the way, it was time to move on to fixing the plastic parts. I thought I'd tackle the quote-unquote easy bits first and mend some of the cracks before they got any worse. Now you'll see me using epoxy in a minute here, but that takes a while to set, and while I will be reinforcing these patches with epoxy, I wanted to get them closed, and for that I used super glue. I generally hate super glue because it always glues every freaking thing around me except the thing I actually want to glue, but I guess it worked well enough in this case. But these are just minor issues. The main one is the top lid, and it's such a common problem that the community stepped in with some custom solutions. I've already mentioned This Does Not Compute, and he graciously provided some free 3D printed parts which make repairing these guys possible. So I got these printed, and the idea is to cut the remaining plastic pieces around the area off and sand it all until it's flat. I used sandpaper, but I felt I could do a better job with a Dremel, going slow and making sure it doesn't jump and ruin the surrounding area. I used a little sanding bit, but I also did sand the area by hand later on to make sure it's all uniform and flat. Having prepped the area, I used some 2-part epoxy to glue those plastic pieces down into the cavity. They're quite similar, but the left one has an opening for that display ribbon. It's very important to get this line up, otherwise your holes won't match and the lid could end up binding. I left this to dry overnight, and while I had the epoxy mixed, I added some to those cracked areas on the inside as well to reinforce the super glue. After the epoxy had set, I reused those brass inserts, and the interesting method is to use your soldering iron to heat press them into the plastic holes, which seemed like a great idea, but wasn't really as straightforward as I hoped. The main issue I found was the melted plastic getting into the thread of the brass insert, so I had to clean it out later. That aside, it seemed to work well, but before installing the cover back, I needed to remove the hinges to re-lubricate them. See, one of the reasons these plastics break in the first place, apart from them getting brittle, is the hinges getting sticky and stiff and binding up. I worked them real good with some lube and pliers, just going back and forth until they felt smooth. Now, even though they felt smoother, I do think they're a bit too stiff for these old plastics. I started reassembling everything back, however I got worried since I noticed some more cracks over the left side of the hinge and I was just waiting for it to snap. So before that happened, I actually removed the left hinge entirely, which meant there was no strain on it whatsoever, but the lid would still open and close normally and it was held up with a single hinge no problem. And while I know this isn't ideal, I think it's preferable to having the whole thing break in a different spot again. And working on this computer, I just got the feeling that it kinda just wanted to fall apart. There were indeed clips missing on one of the LCD covers that I didn't notice previously, as well as the screw thing that holds it on to the hinges, so it's barely staying in place. But I managed to get it together, so now it would open and close normally, although I was very careful when doing so. As far as that hard drive goes, it seemed to be working after all, and it did have some documents on there that I could move about. It just wouldn't boot from it, maybe because there was some OS system files removed from it. I decided I was happy enough with it as it was, booting off that disk, and I just recently did a video on a Macintosh SC where I assembled a blue SCSI, which could indeed be used with this computer, although you need an adapter to go from that stupid square connector to a 25-pin SCSI. And honestly, in terms of ports and overall usability, this thing kinda sucks. And it's of course a reflection of this thing being a low-end budget model when it was released. Another low point is that passive matrix, black and white screen, and the fact it's held up by hopes and prayers. Still, I will remind you it was $10, and when you work on stuff like this, it's like bonding experience, so I grew quite fond of it, even with all its flaws. And I was glad to be able to add this to my stash of working PowerBooks, and I hope you enjoyed this little episode. Hopefully it was fun watching me work on it. And if it was, then great. You might like some other videos. I do them every week. Repairs, restorations, reviews, retrospectives, and all sorts of other nerdy tech stuff. If you like what I do and you'd like to support me, you can do so on Patreon for just $1 a month, or more if you'd like. You'll get early access to my videos, and I usually have a couple for my supporters to see first. If you'd like to chat with me and other users, you can join our Discord server. All the links will be in the video description. Thanks, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.